Hi, this is Jo Ann Kobuke, your midlife coach and founder of Midlife Rewritten. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with Kristine McGuire. Kristine describes herself as a wife, mother, daughter, sister, and friend. She loves working with herbs and essential oils and plants. In the past, Kristine has been a teacher of children, a musician, and a published author. Now, she just wants to be a free spirit and enjoy talking about life. So welcome, Kristine.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be able to chat with you today.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So tell me a little bit about these essential oils and the herbs that you like working with.
I actually discovered, thanks to a friend over 20 years ago, I discovered, essential oils that can be used every day, like for cleaning and for face, for your face care and your hair and that kind of thing. But then, and so I incorporated them into my life, just a little bit at a time, to kind of, like lavender and peppermint and things like that.
Yeah.
Just a few, But then probably about 5 years ago, another friend really got into one of the big MLM companies.
Oh, yeah.
Oils,
Yeah.
and she was very successful. And so she started telling me more about what she was doing with oils. And so I learned how to use frankincense for lifting my mood. And I learned how to create blends. Like, for instance, my husband has asthma. So I've learned, I created a blend that now helps him, that I diffuse through the house. It helps with his asthma, things like that,
Yeah.
and things to help support the body and to just live a healthier life. So I'm very passionate
Wow, that's
about
great.
How essential oils can be used.
Yeah, that's something that I haven't learned that much about. It's something that's kind of on my list of things to investigate further.
I encourage it.
Oh, good. I'll do that. I know several people who are involved in it, and so I just need to reach out and make that effort. So tell me a little bit about your life. We are here talking to women in midlife, and so what they're often interested in is that how you make that transition into midlife and how you deal with some of those issues that come up when you have an empty nest or you choose to make a change in your relationship. So tell me a little bit about your journey up to this point.
Sure. Well, I'm 54, just turned 54 this month.
Oh,
and thank you. And I'd say, it's been interesting because as thinking back on it, I've noticed different areas of my life based on decade, from the from when I was about in my 20s all the way up to now in my 50s. And in my 20s, I was very idealistic. I had this expectation for my life, married with children, big house, very stable life. And honestly, that's not how my life turned out. I did get married. I did have 2 children, but along the way, our life was very transient. We didn't buy a big house. My husband changed jobs a lot when we were first married in our 20s and 30s, and we went through a lot of difficulty. And so I had to learn that those early expectations, they were just a little bit unrealistic. They were based, honestly, I think, on what television and movies told me that romance and marriage should be like, know.
Yeah.
So,
I think a lot of us fall prey to those ideas, and it takes time to sort it out and figure out, well, is that really what I want, or do I want something different?
And I think, by the time I got into my 40s, my husband and I had, we'd actually separated for about 5 years. And in that time, I had to learn to really stand on my own 2 feet. I had to learn to provide for my children on my own, and just be a more independent woman than I had been up to that point. And so it's kind of grown from there to where I am today at 54. I feel like I've been able to embrace where I am and who I am now, and take off a bunch of those masks that I had been wearing, and just kind of release those unrealistic expectations from my life, so that today I'm a very happy person with where I'm at.
Yeah, well, that's a great, it's a great transition to be able to make. I think a lot of women get stuck sometimes, and they can't get that far. So tell me a little bit about, what it was like when you were on your own, and you had to, kind of figure out how to make that work for you.
It was rough because, I was in my late 30s going into my 40s. And my husband, during that 5 years, he was pretty much absent from my life and from the children's lives. And I had to really take a deeper look at myself and find out what lies I had believed about myself and that I was telling about myself to me and everybody else. And I had to learn, I went through, honestly, I sought therapy. I went to a therapist and asked for help because I needed to be able to be as strong as possible for my children.
Right.
And one of the best things that she told me was that, you have to fill up your own tank. You have to, fill yourself with good things,
right,
and release those things that are harmful and
that's so true.
Drag you down. And she said, and the more you accept those good things about yourself, the more you're going to draw people to who will reinforce that.
Yeah.
And so I've tried to just over the years emulate that idea of, embracing the positive things. If I start doing negative self-talk, just nip it in the bud and focus on, okay, so yes, that can be an issue, but it doesn't define who I am.
Right.
And so over the years, I've been able to give myself better self-talk. Let's put it that way.
That's really great. It's not something that we learn when we're kids. We don't understand the value or the impact of the words that we hear, both from the outside and from the inside. And I think as kids, we kind of soak up everything around us, and we don't realize. They say, there's the body of thought that says from the time you're born until you're about 7, you have no filters, and you just take in everything and you absorb it, and it becomes the basis for who you think you are. And so it's some serious thinking that has to happen if you want to try to undo some of those things that you've learned. You talked about trying to understand the lies that you'd been telling yourself. So what made you think that you were telling yourself lies? I mean, most people, they don't always think that, I've been lying to myself all this time. So how did that start?
Well, I think the biggest one was that I felt like I wasn't worthy of love. Because I'm the youngest. I'm the youngest of 4 children in my family, and I was a late baby. And I always felt like my father preferred my older siblings to me. And because by the time I was 12, he was gone from the home. My parents divorced, and then I found out he was actually homosexual, and and things like that. And so that was hard for me to understand, and it took a long time to not internalize that and think that my father had rejected me. And it wasn't that he was rejecting me. He and I had a long talk about it before he died, actually, a few years ago. And he had to embrace who he was. And unfortunately, that meant cutting ties with my mother as her husband, and inadvertently that meant
it felt like it was cutting ties
with me. And so I internalized that for many, many years. And that was the biggest lie I think I told myself, is that I wasn't worthy of love. And then when my husband and I were going through this difficult time and we were separated, that just kind of reinforced that. But I was able to, through a lot of work, I would call it shadow work, like Jung would call it, just letting that little child that was inside of me who felt so rejected know that I am worthy of love, and I am worthy of friendship, and for who I am, not for what I do. And so I still have to remind myself that from time to time.
It's a constant conversation that we have with ourselves. That's for sure. I think that it's interesting the way human mind works. In my opinion, we focus on the negative, and we kind of push aside any evidence that's contrary to whatever that thought is that we have. So when we think, oh, we're not worthy of being loved for who we are, we don't see those things that contradict that.
Yeah.
Right? We don't accept the fact that actually, the facts are I'm a great mom to my children. I'm a great friend to people, and I have people who love me for who I am, as friends. And so, why don't I focus on those things instead of focusing on the fact that, I have this turbulent relationship with my father, and I'm not sure what the story was with my husband right now, but, that's only one part of your life, right? But we
Exactly.
just focus on all of that. And
Exactly. And I think that's one of the things we kind of touched on a little bit, is that, I started removing these masks and these expectations and dealing with these inner lies. And, I feel now that I realize that I'm in my middle life, because, it's like, it kind of creeps up on you and you go,
up on you.
when did that happen?
Wow.
But I feel so much freer at the age, at 54,
Yeah.
than I did at 45.
Yeah. That's
you know?
great.
And it's so funny because I know that women, and men, I suppose, struggle when they hit that, the 50 mark.
Yeah.
Honestly, I was like, awesome. This is great. I'm entering into this new decade. I'm all for it, And I'm looking forward to turning 60 in, 6 years or 5 years, whatever it is,
Yeah.
And it's good. Midlife is not as traumatic, I think, at least in my perspective. It's not as traumatic as people seem to think it's going to be.
Yeah. As I interview women, I hear that same thing. It's like, I asked them, I said, what images did you have about midlife before, you realized you were there? And it's so often the case that say, oh, I thought it was going to be this terrible thing. I remember my mom, blah, blah. And unless you've had really positive role models for older women that have been, living their life fully, you tend to think you accept what the media tells you about midlife.
That's true. And the funniest thing is, when I was in my 40s, my mid 40s, my older sister, who's almost 10 years older than me, she said to me at the time, just remember, you will never be more beautiful than you are right now. When I was in my 40s, right? And I kind of brought that into my 50s. I think I'm never going to be more beautiful than I am right now, because right now I'm 54. And I think I'm going to take that into my 60s,
Yeah.
This is the most beautiful I could be, because I've had all that life experience before me, I mean.
It's so true that life experience matters so much, and it just shines through older women who are comfortable with themselves and who accept where they are at this point without blame and shame and all that stuff that can come with it. And, in other cultures and in older times, as a woman grew older, she became more valuable to the community because they recognized the wisdom that she had and they sought it out. And unfortunately, in our culture today, it's totally the other way, right? We just get pushed into the corner like, okay, honey, you've done your thing and we're done with you now.
And isn't it sad, because even young women, who are in their 20s, they feel this pressure to meet society's expectation of beauty, and nobody ever matches it. It has to be, digitally enhanced to be nobody can reach that ideal ever.
I mean, the ideal that they're trying to reach is not a natural one. It's an unnatural one, because, as has been well documented now, all of those things are manufactured and airbrushed. The only real thing is just the image that they started out with originally. By the time they get done, who knows what it is?
Exactly.
It's really sad, because so many of those girls, so many young women are trying to strive for an ideal that really isn't.
And that's what it concerns me too, because I feel like, if you don't get to a place where you're comfortable with who you are by the time you hit my age, you're just all you're going to be doing is grasping for what was past and not embracing the now, because that's, the past is done. It's over. We can't do anything about those choices or the way we lived our life then. All we can do is live the life we have now and embrace that, and I would hate to see young women who are so obsessed with what culture says they're supposed to be, who they're meant to be. If they get to be my age and they're still grasping at that, they're going to be so unhappy.
Yeah.
And I would hate to see that.
Yeah, it's true. I have the same concerns. I also feel that way towards women today who are in your spot and they haven't crossed over that mental threshold to get to a point where they are comfortable accepting, and they do, you can live in regret, and it just taints everything, and you don't really, as you say, appreciate what you have now.
Exactly.
And before you know it, the years move on, and you still are living in regret and haven't made any changes to your life.
Exactly.
So that's part of the work that I want to do, and I do with women at this stage of the game, is helping them to become more aware of the fact that all that ruminating about what happened in the past and what you did or didn't do, it's water under the bridge, and all you can do is learn from it now and then make some different choices. If you don't like what you see behind you, then you need to make some different choices going forward. And I think that's where the rub is, because as you know, making different choices is hard.
It can be so hard.
Yeah.
It's so hard. It's a process.
It
and
is.
Sometimes you have to make that same choice over and over and over. But then, you just keep doing it.
Yeah. It's
away.
Yeah, that's the best that you can do. But it's really great to see that there are more role models, more women who are in their 60s and into their 70s who are living great lives and enjoying what they have. And we need those models. We need those role models so that we have a direction to head into.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about the book that you wrote.
Oh, actually, I wrote two.
Oh.
And they were published by different publishing houses. And it was a religious book at the time. I was a Christian at the time, and so it had to do with spirituality and things of that nature within Christendom. They weren't necessarily popular books, but
it must have been an interesting process for you.
It was.
So how did you? So having that Christian background and moving into what I sense from you is an area of spirituality that you've embraced in making these changes in your life. How did that transition go for you?
Well, it took a while. It's funny because I was raised as a Christian and I lived most of my life as a Christian, and then in my mid-30s, I explored an alternate spirituality. And I really loved it. But then my husband, who was also a Christian, found out and he wasn't happy. So I went back to try. That's when the more masks started going on, because there's, at least in the form of Christianity I was, raised and living in as an adult at that time, there were certain expectations, of how a wife and a Christian mother should be. And I tried that, and again, but it just felt like putting more masks on.
Right.
And I eventually I got to a place where I just couldn't do that, so I started exploring this other spirituality. And it was hard. It was hard to let go of things I'd been raised in and beliefs that I held that I really no longer felt like were right for me.
Right.
It just didn't fit anymore. And then I did end up going back to Christianity for a time, about 3 or 4 years ago, when my father passed away, and my youngest child came out to me as transgendered. And I realized that I just literally didn't fit into that mold. My beliefs, my family, we just didn't fit in that mold anymore. And so I embraced this other spirituality, and it has been so freeing for me over the last few years, just to let go of old thinking. But it has been a process of, not unlike, letting go of those childhood lies that I had told to myself, but, just letting go of religious dogma that I had held on to very tightly for a very long time, and particular teachings that I just held on to, and just think those just don't fit me anymore, and releasing those and embracing what I believe now. So it's been a process, but it's been a good one.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's all part of the journey that you've had to get to this point where you are now accepting of what you're, who you are and want your life to be.
Yep. So, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of losing you. I lost your audio a little bit.
Oh, okay. Let me see here. Tell me, I don't know, I keep getting these little dings on my thing. Tell me, so if you could go back, that old question, right? If you could go back and talk to your 20 or 30-year-old self, what would you want? What would you want to tell her?
I'd probably tell her, be willing to take more risks. Don't believe everything that you're told, especially about yourself. And be willing to embrace alternate ideas.
Be open to different ways.
Be open to experience. There were so many things that I was not willing to even try to experience because it didn't fit into what I had pictured for my perfect little life. And I'd also say, life is hard. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs, but hold on, because it's going to be better.
Yeah. And so when you think about women in midlife now, and what the kinds of things that they're going through, just like yourself, what would you say to them?
I would say, sisters, let go of your past. You may have been, a teeny tiny size,
size
with a bitty bitty waist back in the day, but embrace who you are now. If you are a voluptuous woman, then embrace that voluptuousness, as long as you're healthy. That's the most important thing. Earlier when we, before we got started, I had mentioned I went through a cancer last year, and that's a very eye-opening experience. That really brings the idea of, okay, not only am I in middle life, but there's an end. There's eventually an end point. And that was a scary thing to think about. And I felt like my body was turning against me, and so I would say to these women, make sure you're healthy, do everything you can to be as healthy as you can, and let go of the past, live for today.
Yeah, that's so true. So even though you want to focus on living for today, what do you see ahead of you as you look down the pike, and what other things would you like to add to your life?
Okay, well, let's see. Travel. I've had the opportunity to do a little bit of travel. I've been to England, I've been to Costa Rica, but I would love to do more traveling with my family in particular. My husband and my oldest child and I do a podcast together that is centered around our spiritual lives. That is going very, very well, to the point where I'm now working on a book based on one of our episodes. And we speak at various conferences and things like that. And so I'd like to see that grow.
Right.
And then I would just like to continue to embrace my health and to help other women embrace health and enjoying life where they're at.
Yeah. I think that's such an important thing, to just enjoy life where you are, and be in the moment, and stop worrying about what happened in the past, and don't worry too hard about what's going to happen in the future, because it's just going to happen.
It's just going to happen. And there are some things that we can, make a difference in, and there's some things we can't stop. As my oldest likes to say, entropy comes for us all. But but you can do it with blue hair and a smile if you want.
Yes. There's no reason why, although I don't think I can get this hair to be blue. I've always, look, I thought, well, maybe I'll put this little streak in. I go to the hairdresser and she goes, well, honey, if you do that, your hair is probably going to fall out because I'm going to bleach it. So there's nothing to it. I said, okay, never mind.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I like to play, so.
Yeah. I have friends who have rainbow hair. Every time I see them, their hair is different. It's great.
It's great. And I love to see, older women doing that too. It's like, it's great. It's fun. Be who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry. I hear something in the background. I'm thinking, I have to deal with that. But yeah, so that's just really great. I really enjoyed talking with you, and I appreciate so much you sharing with us.
Well,
so thank you very much, Kristine.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to have been a part of this conversation.
Great. Okay. Well, you take care.
You too.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation today. As a thank you for being here, I'd like to offer you my Glorious Second Act Workbook and Planner. It's a great tool to help you gain clarity on what it is you want next in your life and to develop a plan to get you there. It's a totally free gift. The link is down below. So click the link, download your planner, and get started, taking action and creating a new and exciting second half to your life. I'm Jo Ann Kobuke, your midlife coach. Stop by again for another episode of Modern Midlife. See you next time.